Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today's presentation is about open code, and I'm going to explore with you how to make your code published in an open access format so that others can cite it and use it. Now, the presentation is a part of a playlist on open science. I invite you to watch previous videos because they are strongly related to the content of today. And from there, I want to share with you the objective of today's presentation. Well, the goal of today's presentation is to make your code citable. Also, it is to encourage researchers to publish their codes in open access. The content of today's presentation is describing what is open code, how to publish your code in an open access format, and how to make sure that it will be reproduced and reused by others who are citing your work, and finally some takeaway messages. Now let's start with open code. And what is open code? Well, open code refers to author-generated code used in scientific research and made publicly and available under an open access license. The code can be made available via a linked repository or as a supporting information. Now, why is it important to do that? Well, normally you build a piece of software to solve a research question, but when you move on to the next project, there is no one to maintain this piece of software. As it ages, it becomes obsolete, and the next academic needs to tackle a similar problem, finds themselves having to reinvent the wheel. So in this sense, allowing your code to be accessed by others and used by others, you're from one side helping others, on the other side you are extending the life of your own code. And by that we can assure to advance the science, encourage open science, and allow the reproducibility and transparency. Also, when you ask me why open code is important, well, it helps you to overcome a culture of relative neglect in academia for open source scientific software. As we know, your software will be easily found if you do it in open access. Others can use your code and give you credit and maybe contribute to the code and add to it some supplementary scripts and finally lines of script. And for sure, funders and publishers might require publishing your data in open code, so you need to know how you will do it and in which format. And allow me to present you GitHub as a very interesting open access platform. GitHub is a code hosting platform for version control and collaboration. It lets you and others work together on projects from everywhere and in the same time allow others to access your code, and you can even define a problem together with others, and before that you even come up your end code, others will help you so that it is a collaboration to a code. Now, the advantage here is to look at how to make it citable. Well, you need to publish your code first on GitHub and generate a citable archived repository for your code on Zenodo so that your research data can be consulted. Now, if we look at Zenodo, Zenodo will allow you to get permanent citable DOI, and DOI is a digital object identifier. If you watch previous videos, you will know more about it. So then you can have your code published with a DOI, and it is found on the repository of GitHub and the repository of Zenodo. So this is very important to start with. Now, how can I publish my code after I'm done with my script and I tested it? Well, first thing I advise you to create an account and create a repository on GitHub. Then you will have to make the repository public to be able to archive it and that others can see it and maybe contribute to it. Then you will need to initiate the repository with a README file where you are describing all the details of your code, in which context it can be used, what software are you using, what are the versions that you are using, so that others can reuse it. Then you can add your scripts and other related files to your software. And finally, you can add the licensing information to your repository that you would like to do. For example, any Creative Commons license. If you want to know, you can check a video previously I presented on Creative Commons. So this is the first step. First, start with GitHub and embed your code or insert your code in GitHub as an entry. Second step now, how to link my GitHub to Zenodo, because actually GitHub will not provide you a DOI. The DOI will be you will get it from Zenodo, which is open access repository, and from there you need to couple both. So the first thing you need to do is to link the GitHub with Zenodo. So head over the http zenodo.org after you created your GitHub entry or repository. In Zenodo, you will be directed back to GitHub for authorization. So you provide them authorization, and then you can select a repository you want to archive on Zenodo. And once this is done, your code will have a citation line. You will have the author, the year, the name of your code, the DOI, and any further details on the link or the URL of your citable code. In this sense, you are done. You can take it now and start to cite it in your article or share it with other colleagues or on social media or whatever media to make sure that others can go back and trace your work, either for using it, for reproducing it, for developing, whatever, but in the same time while citing it. Now allow me, before finishing the talk here, to talk with you about reproducibility, and it's becoming a very major concern, and it's a very important in this sense to share your code. Now it's important to allow others to reproduce your work for reusing it. So in general, researchers use superficial descriptions of their methods. They use complex methods, models with no available code, and there is data missing or unreadable or unexecutable formats when we look at previous codes. And also in many situations there is non-disclosure situations that does not allow us to reproduce the code. Trade secrets, GDPR violation. So it's very important when you are starting to sharing your code to address these problems and make sure that you have a very good description of your method for your code. You are not using a very complex coding system that requires leaving different software and interfaces. Make it simple. Make sure that all elements are not missing. Make sure that you are not violating any GDPR requirement. If you respect those, we can only then say that your code is reproducible and can be reused. And I promise you, if the code is useful, believe me, many people will take it, copy it, cite you, and start to use it or build on it. And by that, you have a new line of citation. You have a new life that you're adding to yourself by making your code a sleeping beauty that everybody is always citing, using, and continuing to build on. Some takeaway message before ending today's presentation regarding open code. Well, open code it's a system that is based basically on peer development, peer community. It is embedded in the field of software development, and for sure it can save the science of software. Today, many people use software, models, scripts. They need to process the data, pre-process the data, post-process the data. Please contribute to this phenomena and be part of this community. Anybody who is using modeling techniques, software in general, I encourage them to get involved in this open code movement, because it's really beneficial, and it's not only about you, it's also about the community and peers. So use it as a way of expanding your research, develop your programming skills, and make sure that you have at least one or two software that you can do some basic programming. Be generous and share. Don't be only thinking about yourself. Make sure that as long as you have a DOI, you will be credited, so there is no worry. So believe me, it is really rewarding. Share your article, data sets, and code will be part of the open source community. So today we are not only expecting you to share your article in open access or share your data set in open access. If you are also coding, do it. Then you are just moving the extra mile, but it will be very rewarding. Set up a data management plan before starting any project, and discuss your open access policy. And today, in any funding project, big funding project, you must have a full section about your open access policy. So make sure when you develop your open access policy, you're talking about the open accessibility of your article, of your data set, and about your codes, so that others can benefit from that. Because if you don't do it, sometimes funders will ask you to make all your codes and scripts that you developed during a research open access. So don't hesitate to invest in this field, and for sure benefit from others that maybe contribute to the code. Maybe somebody will add something, improve it, refine it, touch it, then you can reuse it without any problem and push your work one step further, produce new visualization, new outputs. And finally, you might end up creating an open source software if you are doing a full tool in this case, or a software instead of only a code or a piece of a script. Then maybe this also software, if you wish to publish it in an open source, it will be very rewarding because then others will use it. By that, I end up today's presentation. Today's presentation was part of a playlist on open science. By that, you know now sufficient information about open code and how to publish your script, how to cite it, how to make sure that others can cite it, and for sure, how can others use it and build on it. Thank you very much for your attention. Today's presentation was about open code. I hope you benefit from the presentation.